And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Kymm Civetta, survivor of inoperable cancer, whose life-threatening illness brought her face to face with her mortality. With no religious background, Kymm was transported to heaven in a shift of consciousness during a self-healing regime of fasting and deep surrender, bringing forth the profound message that heaven is indeed real. Kymm, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, so much for having me on your show. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you.
Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Kymm, can you start with telling us about your experience?
Yes. So I was diagnosed the second round of cancer. It was melanoma, and it had metastasized. It was inoperable. My oncologist at that time had given me a really extreme kind of medicine to help it to shrink, and then I was supposed to be able to get a surgery to get it out. But that medicine didn't shrink it enough. And the downside of that medicine is that if you don't get it out, it's going to just wreak havoc and grow very quickly and basically kill you if you don't get it out. So I was in that place. The surgeon told me, there's no way that I will touch you on this surgery. You know, you're going to die on the table. The doctor's pushing. I don't recommend it. So I went home from that doctor's appointment, and I didn't want my kids to hear me cry because there were no answers. So I actually went into our walk-in closet, and I was doing a health regime of wheatgrass. I was fasting. I was doing everything I could on the alternative green side of things, and for years. And I really didn't want to do Western at all, but I had no choice. So I was there. And I went into the closet and I just laid down to just ask for help, to pray. And I was just in a state, I can't even describe how desperate I was. And up until this point, I was kind of in this place where I was like, I'm going to do this myself. You know, I'm not going to tell a lot of people. I didn't want people to look at me differently because I'm in the public eye at times. So I just wanted to be like, I can handle this on my own, eating healthy. You know, I don't need any help kind of thing. And so I was in this meditation, just laying down, kind of curled on my side and just crying and asking God for help. Just, I said, you know, I was asking Jesus, if you want me, you know, I'll go. I finally got to the place where I was like, okay, this looks like I don't have any control over this at all. And so I just said, I am willing, I will surrender. If I'm supposed to pass, I'll do it. But I want to ask, and I get emotional every time because my children were young. I just said, if I could just live for my children, you know, if I could just ask that, you know, to give me a chance, to give me, you know, some little way of healing that I just have not looked into. And so I was crying, and I was in a very deep state of meditation and surrender and breathing. And all of the sudden, this is not new to me because I have, you know, psychic medium gifts. So there was this transportation is the only way that I can describe it is that I awoke. I was no longer aware of the closet. I was no longer aware of, you know, like how the floor felt. And I was laying in the same position, but I woke up and I saw this intelligent mist. Okay, so maybe some people might think of it as like clouds, like heavenly clouds, but it wasn't clouds. It was a mist that was white And every molecule, every atom of those molecules that were not molecules, atoms that were not atoms, this mist that was not like a physical mist, it was intelligent. It was the extension of Jesus. And it felt almost like an extension of his white robe that was just the foundation of what I was laying on. And when I sat up, I say sat up physically, like just in my soul, I sat up. I was told there was like this instantaneous download. So it's like a clairvoyant knowing, and it happens lightning fast. So it wasn't like I heard the voice of God telling me what to do. It was like I just knew it, and it was happening now. So there's no delay in time where I'm asking a question and then I wait and then I receive an answer. So I knew immediately that this was Jesus, and that it was all of heaven was an extension of his immense unconditional love. And it's a love that there's no way to describe in any kind of vocabulary that we have on earth. It's like, you know that you would die for your kids, and that is your ultimate love, or your pet, or, there's this love that we experience, but it's not even an inkling of what that love is. And I was basking in the knowledge that I was there and that I was in the presence of Jesus. And I didn't grow up religious. I didn't have, my parents, it was the late 70s. They were into gurus. They wanted me to find God in my own way. At one point, I think I asked, like, why don't we go to church? Would you take me to church? And they were like, we're not stepping foot in any church. We want you to find God in your own way. And so this was like, I probably was a little, I guess, like rebellious in some ways. Like if I saw a bumper sticker that said, Jesus loves you, I would be like, well, what does that mean? And like, you're making it so small. But I understood on every level how he loves me and us and you. I knew it without a doubt. And so there was this invisible cross on this mist. Like, so I couldn't see it with my spiritual eyes or my physical eyes. It was like a cross that was known, that was laying down. And I was in the southwest corner of that cross. And I was made to know that I should not cross this line. I should not get up and walk around. I shouldn't go in front of me or to the side of me. I should stay where I was. And there was this song, but it's not like music. I'm a musician, so I'm a singer. So this is not anything that I can describe. It's not like the healing frequencies. It wasn't Om. It wasn't many of the things that I looked into from quantum physics. This was a sound of all of the souls in heaven. And it was like, I hope this is not too religious of a term, but it was like a constant praise. Honestly, it was like a sound that was not human in any way, shape, or form. And it just went all inside of me. And I knew his love. I knew, it's so hard to describe, that unconditional love that we're all looking for. We're looking for it in food. We're looking for it in, substance. We're looking for it in our spouse, in our children, in our best friend, and in everything. We're looking for that unconditional love. And the reason we are always slightly empty is that we remember what we came from, which is that state of absolute unconditional love. It's like the immenseness of it is just, I just started crying, but not out of tears. It was like this joy in knowing, oh my gosh, how could I have forgotten this? I did not understand how I could have forgotten something this immense. The constant, unconditional love and sound of love. It's almost like, could this have been the sound of creation? The point of creation. I just was completely overwhelmed. And I immediately, I knew, like, off in the distance. So I have seen, like in my early 20s, I had an experience with Jesus. So I did not see his form. It was like on the horizon, like I was laying on this mist, and on this horizon was this white, extending mist that felt to me as though it was his white robe that was the all of heaven. And as soon as I was there and I felt that, and I was told not to cross, and that I was aware of, this is what we come from, I was immediately sent back into my body. And I was crying tears of, don't just take me back. I don't want to be here, and I was praying for my children, to be with my children. And yet when I was separated from that, I didn't want to be back here. I wanted to be there. I never wanted to leave. And it was just, I just was crying, and I felt like so heavy. I felt like there was, like, you could actually feel the density of, gravity again, like just on my body. I felt like I was lead, and I felt pain again. And I felt the sorrow of having inoperable cancer, like all of that. But I could not believe that I wanted to stay and not be with my family. That was the reason I was praying. So I believe I was shown that I'm not done, and that there was a lot to do with, helping to guide and navigate my children and our life, and my life purpose in, writing this book, that Heaven in My Eyes that you can see here. At least I hope that this biography of the experiences I've had with the heavenly realm could possibly help someone that's viewing to inspire their own experiences, and to, just have that knowledge that it's not just nothing when we die. It is not. And all the pain that we feel here and everything that we're going through, there is absolute love on the other side. So that is my story about being transported to heaven and coming back. Now, I came back, and the very next day, a dear friend that was working on lymphatic cancer patients at her job, she said she was working on someone, and they wouldn't stop talking about this doctor for melanoma that was the best, and that she gave me his phone number. And I went to him. I left that current oncologist, and I went to him, and I'm cured. I'm in remission. There were no answers, and he had answers that she didn't have. So I feel in my heart of hearts that it was that visitation that Jesus found that doctor. I feel that I received that unconditional love that led to healing. And also in the physical realm, I was able to find an option through him.
Kymm, thank you for sharing your amazing experience with him. Are you saying that you were cured in heaven, or once you got back, he gave you some kind of new medication that cured you, or at least sent you in remission?
There was a time frame. I went to that doctor immediately. It wasn't like I didn't have cancer, like as soon as I came back. I feel like time doesn't exist there, and that although it's miraculous to me because there were no answers, that this doctor had some new immunotherapies that were pretty risky. But I'm in remission. I have no cancer. There was no way that there was going to be a path for me. And yet after this experience, there was. So I'll leave that up to the listener to, process that. And I think it's almost a hybrid because my healing was hybrid. I was doing everything green, everything possible, fasting and wheatgrass and, all of that, radical forgiveness, everything that you've ever looked into, for self-healing. I was doing it. And I had somewhat of I just didn't want to do Western. And yet I was taught that, yes, this is the answer. The hybrid of this is the answer. And so that really was very humbling because I was kind of holding on to this thing like, I'm just going to heal myself and I don't need to tell anybody about this. And then once that happened and that experience happened with Jesus, there was just prayer. I started opening up about it. And there's just like this plethora of support that I wasn't allowing myself to have until I was transported.
Would you say that the experience in heaven either brought the doctor to you or helped you manifest the doctor?
I believe that Jesus had that friend tell me about that doctor, without a doubt. 150%. Why did it happen the next day? I've been talking to this friend for years, didn't know anything about this doctor. So I feel like it's also a message, I've heard on other broadcasts that I've done that there are some people that just will not choose Western. They just won't. And then there's other people that won't look into, natural. And so I just say to you that it may not be exactly the way you perceive that it is going to be. It may be that you have to, as in my case, I'm not saying this is anybody else's case, but I had to let go of my ego and I don't want to say let go of my will to live, but in a way, I had to accept that path that, that I was basically facing death. I was facing my mortality. And that's a big thing, because I'm pretty protective. I'm a mama bear and I wasn't about to do that. And here I found myself saying, okay, if I'm going, I'm going. And I think that was part of the healing. I think it was like almost accepting the will of God almost. And then in doing so, there was an answer. It's almost like, a conundrum in ways where it's like opposite of what I thought it would be.
Would you say that your experience was dreamlike and could be from a dream, or it was more real than you and I sitting here talking?
It's more real than you and I talking. I didn't want to leave there. Every single molecule was filled with unconditional love. And there's no way to describe it in earthly terms. And so that experience was like, this is my real life. This is where we all come from. This is what we remember. This is why we're confused and looking here and looking there for that unconditional love. And we're meant to forget, I believe. We're meant to forget about it, because I when I was there, I was like, wow, this is so complete, absolute, and immense. How is it that I could have forgotten? You know, I just remember, I don't know, I thought of this. I remember when I was 2 years old, and who of us has memory when they're 2 years old? But I remember this like it was yesterday also. I was looking out a screen door at the courtyard, and I was watching kids play, and they were fighting over a toy, and hitting each other and calling each other names and running from each other. And I remember hopping outside of my body, like I was in this little 2-year-old body, and then part of me went on the outside of my body, and it was in a voice like now, like an adult voice. And I heard my voice say, "I didn't think it would be this violent." And I remember it like it was yesterday. And so where was I from? That was the absence of violence. Where was I from that, I agreed possibly with God to come into a body and to spread love and light, or however you want to term it. But then when I saw that, I was just like, I just didn't realize that it would be this violent. And so that to this day, I wrote about that in my book too. It's like, where did I come from? And that's where it started. I had a lot of, gifts as a child, where I would see light around people. I had the sense of spirit. And, in my early 20s, it all started with Jesus, which is kind of amazing. In my early 20s, that was my first visitation with him. And that was a time where, I've been with my husband many, many, many years, and we met when we were 17, and we have been together this whole time, 38 years.
That's great.
And so, yeah. And worked together, lived together, everything. And we had this little breakup when I was like 21. And I was crying myself to sleep. I didn't want to turn off the light. I was scared to turn the light off, and he wasn't there. And I actually didn't know how to sleep by myself, and I was just brokenhearted. And earlier that week, again, I'll say again, I have not been religious. I, didn't have that upbringing. But earlier that week, a cousin had sent me a Bible, right? They'd sent me the Holy Bible. They thought that, that I needed help, And so on the Holy Bible, it said my name, and it was sitting on the nightstand. And I was just kind of like staring at it, I hadn't opened it or read it or anything, but I just stared at it, like almost like, just yelling like, "God, help me. I don't know how I'm going to get through this." Now, I wasn't calling to Jesus, because at that time, I really wasn't aware of him. I wasn't aware of, the Bible or the word or Jesus or anything like that. And so I was looking, and when I rolled back over, I had a 3D experience. So I was in my body with the vision, but I was floating above my body with sight. And I was also looking across the room at a rocking chair that was by a window. And I saw this man in a white robe rocking me. And when I looked down in this body, it was like a 3D thing. When I looked down, I saw his white robe, holding me and rocking me. And that's when that was my first open vision. And that was with Jesus. I knew that it was him. And I that's when I accepted him into my heart, and from there was a lot of, I started to have the gift of spiritual discernment, or if you want to call it psychic mediumship. People would visit me, in the middle of the night with a message for their loved ones. Everything came from that point on. And I tried to keep it quiet for a long time because I thought maybe people would think I was crazy. They wouldn't accept me. I didn't really share any of these experiences until I started to write the book. And that was after healing from cancer.
Have you had experiences with other biblical figures like Mother Mary or archangels?
I have. So if we're going in chronological order, I had, when my son was 2, he's 18 now, but when he was 2, he was playing with a train, I'm just going, choo, choo, like just doing these nice little sounds. And I was laying on the carpet, just listening to him and kind of going in that deep, state where I was just open. And it's like that happiness place, just my little boy, and listening to him. And I started to ask this question, like almost like a nonchalant conversation, but it was inside. And I was like, I wonder if, are archangels really real? Because maybe they're just like, we have to draw them and paint them so that we have a physical thing to relate to. I mean, aren't they just light? And aren't they just, like part of God, or, like whatever. And I just felt, I was just laying there. I was just like talking to myself. And as I lifted my head up, I saw Archangel Michael sitting on the fireplace stoop. Now, when I say that, somehow this download hit me, like where it's all telepathic for me. All of it is telepathic. It's not like an actual auditory voice that's happening. I just knew that he was 7'4". He had that breastplate on, that he looked somewhat Nordic to me. He had this breastplate on with this bronze. He had long hair. He had a shield. And he said really loudly inside of my head, like this booming voice, I am real, like that. And I was like, and at that time, I didn't really want to face that I had these gifts of, being able to see spirit and angels and all that. And so I ran into the kitchen because I was like, okay, I wasn't, aren't, big time people supposed to see things like this? I mean, I'm nobody. Why, just asking a simple question, why would I see him? And the only way I can describe him is that, like in the Bible, I don't know, there's this, he's supposed to accompany Jesus in the end times, if you're reading that, like that is one of the stories in Revelations. And so I didn't know anything about him, but I knew his name as soon as I saw him, and I knew his height, and I knew who he was. And he is the warrior of the universe. I mean, there's no question in his power. I mean, I do believe that verse in the Bible, like in later years, I did go to that. And I do believe that because he's just, it's like, darkness or negative energy or whatever cannot exist in his presence. I just don't, so that was unbelievable, that experience with Archangel Michael.
All right. Well, what about Mother Mary?
Okay. So my experience with Mother Mary, again, I have to go back in years that, not religious, wasn't Catholic, didn't grow up in a Catholic upbringing. I just bring up Catholicism because they're, predominantly focused on Mother Mary. And so I had gone through my first bout of cancer, and I was supposedly had clear margins. I had had a surgery, and for melanoma, and it was like clear, but I still had this doubt as I was, over 40, I think it was like 42. I knew I was supposed to have another child, but I just had this like awful pain. Like, could I actually do that? What, having had cancer, would that, hurt the pregnancy? Would I be able to do it? I was already 42, like all those questions. And I was, going through that mind chatter as I was falling asleep. And I was sleeping with my son. I was co-sleeping with him, and he was little. And I just fell asleep with, tears, mascara on the pillow and all that. And I was awoken at dawn, or at least I think it was dawn, because there was this pink light in the room, although the blinds were drawn. So not sure how the light was going into the room, but there was this feeling of pink, pink and pink light. And I felt on the side of the bed, I felt this like pressure change, like this dense pressure change. And I heard a voice. I didn't see this messenger. I heard it auditorily. This is the one that I heard auditorily. It was a female voice. It was very gentle. And it said, "Go out into the garden and dig." So I, go out into the garden and dig. I started to argue. My mind came in. I was like, I'm not going to leave Landon. I'm not going to go out there and dig. It's first thing in the morning. I'm, blah, 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 blah. And so the voice kept repeating, but not in elevated frustration or anything like that. It was just, it's already happening. And it was accompanied by a heavenly map. And this heavenly map was of our rose garden. And there was an arrow pointing to a particular rose bush, and it said, "Dig here." And it was in white cursive. Okay, so I'm getting this heavenly map. So I said out loud, okay, I'm listening. So I put on my Uggs, I put on my robe, I walk outside. And as I'm walking, it was almost like time didn't exist. I felt a difference in air pressure. Again, it was like I wasn't on the earth or something. It felt much different, not like the heavenly experience I told you about, but it was definitely like a state of now and a state of love. So I went into the garden. I sat down on the bench for a minute. I don't even know why I sat down. I just decided to sit down. All of a sudden, and this is going to sound like something from a movie. Like, I don't even, like, sometimes I ask myself, did that really happen? So 4 hummingbirds, synchronistically, 2 on either side, just hovering there for like 15 seconds. Now in hummingbird land, that's a long time. And I was just sitting there and I was like, what is happening? And so again, as soon as the hummingbirds kind of departed, I did not hear the voice again, but I saw the heavenly map. Here's the rose bush, here's the arrow, dig here, all in white. So I get up and I'm, moving away like dried leaves from the trees because it's winter. So I'm moving that all away. And I go down into the soil by this rose tree. And it's soft because, we've been watering, it's been raining. So I'm digging down about 4 inches. And I was like, oh. And I can't, I have it with me if you want to see it. Mm-hmm. So I find this figurine there in the soil. Wow. And I dropped to my knees and I started crying because I was like, Mother, like that's Mother Mary, And I looked at her, I was brushing away the dirt. But then I realized, I was like, what is this? So I don't know if I can get it, wait, close enough. But do you see she has no hands?
Yeah.
Okay, the hands are off, right? So that was a little like, why are the hands off, right? So I knew that the message was that I was going to have another child and that it would be a girl. I knew it without a doubt. She came to me. I know that she oversees children. She has a very soft spot, that love for children. Obviously, she saw her son suffer. So I think that she's really powerful in that, and that she is powerful in prayer. I don't think that she's the one that's doing the healing necessarily, but I do believe that she is very powerful to call on for children. And in this case, for me, it was, asking if I can have another child. And then I got this message. So I kept it quiet. I cleaned her off. I put her away. I put this statue away, the little figurine. And years later, when I had the second bout of cancer, I had my daughter, Lyric. I had her, and was just like, wow. And I think that I just kept it quiet for a long time. But then when I went through the second bout of cancer, it was on Mother's Day. And I thought, there's got to be somebody that would support me in finding this. And so I went to a Catholic church, because I thought, who knows better about Mother Mary than, Catholics, right?
Right.
So I'm there. I listen to the mass. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm standing up and sitting down. I didn't really quite know what to do. I went into the gift shop. I put the statue back into the car, and I just went into the gift shop to just, look around. And this woman walked up to me and she's like, something about you. I don't know what it's about. Come to find, she's like the head of all the sabbaticals, right? She's like, I'm just so drawn to you. What's going on? Yeah. And we're just talking. And I was like, well, I came here for some answers. Would you just stay here? I'm just going to go get this. So I went to the car. I get it out of my pretty box with the rose petals and all this. And I show her this figurine. And I told her the story. And I said, I don't know what it means. I don't know why would she have no hands, And so she goes, would you wait here? And I was like, sure. And so she gets the father, the priest, to come, and he's blessing the figurine. He's blessing me. And it was almost like, everybody's stopped now. The conversations in the gift shop have stopped. Everybody's kind of like, what is going on here with this situation? And one of the devout Catholic women came up and she goes, do you know what it means when you find a statue or a figurine, or you come across this where it doesn't have hands? And I was like, no, I don't. And she said, it means that you are to be the mother's hands in the world. That's why she has no hands on the figurine, and you are to be the hands in the world. And so that one, I was like, yeah, but I'm nobody. Like, what? I'm not even Catholic. Like, why are these things happening to me? And then why, is it all right to talk about them? Not so welcome in certain circles, because I'm on the line of, seeing these heavenly figures. Like, I've never seen guides. The only heavenly figures I've seen are, of course, Jesus, Archangel Michael, Mother Mary, and then people on the other side, loved ones on the other side, that have messages for their loved ones that are here, and that I work with them with, grief and trauma through the sessions that I do with them with AIM. So Angel Intuitive Ministry, I do sessions through that. And so it's kind of like, okay, where do I belong? For many years, I had a question of, where do I belong? And I looked into a lot of things. And I think where I belong is just maybe even carving out a place for many of us who, just by writing this book and coming out and sharing, and just saying that it's okay for you to have gifts, and that it's okay to share. I mean, right now, I feel like there's a huge movement, and I'm so grateful to you for your channel, because it's like you're giving so many of us a forum to share that heaven is real. It is. It is real. It's not just some, human, yeah, well, we need to come up with this so that, we feel comfortable on Earth. And so I just decided, okay, if I don't totally belong anywhere, I'll just, write my book and do my sessions and start to share on broadcasts such as the one that you hold, just to get that message out there.
Have you had any other paranormal experiences?
I have. There's this one story that's pretty cool. So it was, I was in Lake Tahoe. We were going to perform for New Year's Eve. My husband and I have a band, and so we flew up there to do New Year's Eve there. And I had just gotten the news that I had cancer, and it was the first diagnosis. So I was really not in a good place at that time. I was like, how am I even going to perform? How am I going to keep this from everybody? Leader of the band, lead singer, how am I supposed to do all this? So I walked into Jamba Juice. Okay. And I'm getting my wheatgrass. I'm doing my natural thing. And I see in front of me, I had my son with me, and I see this man outside of the doors that was, he felt to me that he was homeless, that he was, but it's snowing. It's snowing in Lake Tahoe. So it's kind of rare to be homeless in Lake Tahoe. He had on brand new jeans. He had on a black leather jacket that was thin with a t-shirt. So it's what are you doing here in 22-degree weather? Brand new shoes. But why am I feeling like you don't belong here? Like you're not of this, you're homeless, right? And so I kind of, sometimes in your mind, you're like, okay, what if he's dangerous? Or, I don't know why I was thinking that. I was just being protective of my son. I was in kind of this place with the new diagnosis. So I held his hand, and I was trying to go behind him and so that he wouldn't notice me. I was just trying to make my way to Rubio's, where my husband was ordering lunch for us. And I got to the Rubio's door, and I opened the door, and I heard him call to me. His back is still to me. Now we're on the side, sort of. He's not looking at me. And he says, "Do you have cancer?" And I was like, "Oh, what? And he started to walk towards me. And I said, I do have cancer. And he said, "I'm going to perform a healing on you." And so he held up his palm, and he had the Star of David in green ink. I don't know where he got this green pen, right? So it's a triangle and a triangle, right? And he says, "I've been working with these for about 5 years. This is how Jesus healed people. He spun them. He vibrated them. That's what the Star of David is." Okay, so he's talking about this. I don't even know if that's the right, but anyways, he's these triangles are it. So he holds it over my abdomen, which is where the melanoma was. And then he said, "By the way, your son's a healer." And then he said, "You're going to be healed in 21 days. Okay. So I went in, I was talking to my husband after that. He just kind of walked away. I was crying. I was telling my husband, and I was like, I should give him money or something. I mean, he's cold. He's got this shirt, he's got this t-shirt, and he's got this thin, jacket. He had an Irish accent. He had blue eye, it's so weird, so rare, right? So strange, so amazing, so miraculous. Went out there, could not find him anywhere. Could not find him. And to the day, 21 days, I had my surgery that created clear margins. So again, it's this natural and this Western hybrid, if you think about it. It's the same thing, where it's get this phenomenal, miraculous message, and then there's this action on the planet that I have to do in order to get there.
From what you've told me, It appears that your very first spiritual experience happened when you were 2. Was there anything else that happened before that?
Before 2?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I can remember. That was my first awareness that I was in a 2-year-old body, but that I was much larger than that. That I was already wise and grown up, and that was the big thing that happened.
I was just wondering, perhaps, was that 2-year-old the one thing that started all these experiences for you? Or is there something even perhaps that happened, like even with your birth, that maybe opened the veil for you?
Oh, you just brought my awareness to this. Okay, my mom is very spiritual, right? She's super against religion. Like I told you, she grew up in the guru thing. But at age 18 is when she had me. And she said, after she gave birth, and now that's in the 60s. So in those days, I think they just put you out. You didn't even experience the birth in those days, I don't think. So she was coming out of it, and this Indian woman from India, and she had a red dot here, she carried me into my mom and laid me on her belly. And she said she felt just this incredible love from this woman. And that she said, your child is very special. And she just felt this incredible love from this woman. And then she just walked out of the room. And later on, when she was asking, for that nurse, like, where's that nurse? She's from India. I saw her. I would like to know her name. I would like to know, where she's at. And they were like, there's no nurse here from India. So that's you brought that up, Jeff, because that's like your intuitiveness bringing about that story. I haven't thought of that since my mom told me when I was little. So that was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, there's something obviously going on, from birth, where it's just a little bit different, like there's some differences happening there.
You mentioned that you're a singer. Have any of these experiences affected the way that you sing?
Yes. So since that first experience, that open vision is what I want to call it, with Jesus in my early 20s. Every time before I sing, I ask for just Christ light to, I almost like see it and envision it, that it's like this, like luminescent, like all the colors of the rainbow just coming out of my voice. And there have been times where I've literally turned around and just said a prayer and asked for the love of God to go through my voice and to, help people with whatever they're dealing with, in the audience. And there have been times, like I remember I was singing, I was pregnant with my son, 8 months. And I did that prayer, and I was singing Whole Lotta Love, Led Zeppelin, and all of the people, instead of, you're at a corporate party, they're all dancing with each other, or they're, rocking out, or they're doing whatever, or they're laughing. I had my eyes closed as I was singing and praying. But then when I opened my eyes, they had all turned towards me, and they were actually reaching out to be touched in kind of like a concert kind of way, like where you feel that energy. Like sometimes you do that when you're with a headliner, you're like, oh, I just want to touch him or whatever. It was like that, but I think that it wasn't me that they wanted to touch. I think it was that unconditional love that I was, asking to come out of my voice.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you up for that?
I'm up for that. I have a website, and I can drop that in comments. It's angelintuitiveministry.com. And I do readings, I do AIM sessions and all that good stuff. I'll also send the link for my book. It's right here, or like if you want to see it, it's right here. But it's on Amazon, and it's also like self-published through Balboa Press, which is an affiliate of Hay House. So it's on the Hay House website, and it's on all those other forums like Google Books and Goodreads and things like that. And yeah, so I would love it if you, anybody out there wants to read my book and maybe even give me a review on it. I would just adore that. That's always helpful. Reviews are always helpful. And I would love to just, comment and get connected to people. You can always subscribe to my website, and then we're connected that way.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
There's some viewers that are watching that feel really alone. And I just want to say that you are not alone. That that afterlife, that unconditional love is always around you. And if you're feeling shy or, to share your message, your own message, it's time now to come out of the darkness and share that light and that expanded consciousness. And I just think the world is in great need of love and positiveness and the information, the real knowledge that heaven is real.
Kymm, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
You are so awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you, and so are you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.